Hey guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop. We got a special guest today, Nicole Sauce. Everybody knows her anyway, so we're going to have a great time. Anybody wants to know why I sound like a 14-year-old boy? Well, here we are. The COVID finally caught me, so I'm going to let Nicole do all. No, I'm just kidding. Not all the talking today, but I've been interested in freeze drying for a hell of a long time. I keep talking to Becky about wanting to buy a freeze dryer, and I finally figured out a way to make it work for me that it won't cost me money out of pocket. I mean, it's still going to cost me, but on paper, I can make it work. So I figured it was about time that I got Nicole over because you're an expert now, aren't you, Nicole?
No.
No, perfect. So we found the right person. You've made mistakes, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
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 So what did you end up? I mean, well, I'm sure everybody knows who you are, but if you want to introduce, yeah.
Hi, I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast and Hollow Roast Coffee, and I like to help people figure stuff out.
And she's really damn good at it. Give me a chance to speak at her spring workshop this year. Had a wonderful time. We finally met in person, and I'll be back very soon, actually.
Yay! Yeah, South Alliance Festival.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited.
It's coming fast.
So yeah, okay, let's pretend like I'm buying a freeze dryer because I am. I'm going to be buying one in a couple of months. And where do you start? There's a whole bunch of different products to pick from, right?
Yeah, there are now two manufacturers of freeze dryers. I know nothing about the new kid on the block. Because Harvest Right used to be the only freeze dryer resource, and then somebody else popped up. I don't even know their name yet because it happened in the last 6 weeks. And I have been focused on some other things in the last 6 weeks. So it is on my list to check them out. It used to be you could only get a consumer grade freeze dryer from Harvest Right. And there are a lot of good things said about them and a lot of bad things said about them. People complain about their customer service. People rave about their customer service. I think the thing that freaked the most people out about Harvest Right is the price tag.
Sure.
Because you're looking $2,500, $3,500, $4,500 out of the chute. And they were the only game in town, so there wasn't price competition. On the other hand, it's not an easy problem to solve to have a home grade freeze dryer that so many different households with so many different skill sets are using. I think commercial grade equipment is easier to manufacture because people are expecting to have to repair their commercial grade stuff.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I never thought their price was unfair when I got my freeze dryer and really looked at what went into it. I was like, they have thought through a set of components that are relatively easy to put together, which means if something breaks, I can fix it. Right?
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. And they've set it up in a way where the thing that's most likely to go bad, your vacuum pump, is easy to just replace with a new pump without having to pull everything apart. So I appreciate that somebody put that thought into it. But there have been reports in the last 6 months, and they've really exploded in growth, of freeze dryer units arriving broken and them not getting as much customer support as they want. And of course, everybody who has a problem, you hear about it. So I don't know what's up with that. I know that I got a freeze dryer in 2020 in the spring, like late spring, and I love it. That was 2021, actually. I've only had it a year.
Geez.
Yeah, it's 2021, spring 2021. Okay. I got it. It worked. I had a couple of the usual issues people have that are user or their operator error issues. That thing has been a tank for me.
No, like just your typical new user problems. Nothing. You haven't had anything break, obviously, yet.
Nothing's broken. I've been pretty stringent about maintenance schedule on it, changing the oil and keeping it clean and that sort of thing. And I don't run it when it's super hot outside. So
is that an issue with those, or can it be?
The thing about the freeze dryer, the first thing you should know if you're going to get one, and because you're thinking consumer grade food processing, I'll throw it in my kitchen. It's big.
Okay.
It's basically as big as your oven. It's a little bit smaller than your oven, but it's as big as not much smaller than your oven. And then you're going to have it up on a countertop so you can get to it. So there's that. It is loud. Really? You're running a window air conditioner unit in your kitchen. is what you're doing. That's how loud it is. So just go listen to somebody's window air conditioner unit. That's how much noise it's going to put out. It's hot. It puts off heat because it's running a condenser. And you know how condensers work, right?
Oh, yes.
I bet you know how condensers
I sure
work.
do. Yeah.
So, they put off heat. We're keeping that heat outside our houses and bringing the cool inside for air conditioning. It's doing the same thing. It's bringing the cool into the freeze dryer and putting the hot out. So if you do not have it in a ventilated area, or if you do not have air conditioning in your house, it's going to warm up your house just like putting a dehumidifier in your house would.
Could you, maybe this is just the handyman in me, is there a spot you could duct that heat out from, or is that not really a thing with those?
So yes and no. The vacuum pump is separate from the square unit, and the vacuum pump also puts out a ton of heat. Like it'll get to where if you touch it, you could burn your hand hot. Okay. That has a hose that hooks up. So the first thing you can do if you're putting it somewhere in your house is put a hole in your wall and have the vacuum pump out. So I have a friend who, when he built his house, he knew he was going to have his freeze dryer in a food processing room he made. He put the freeze dryer in there, hole into the garage, and that's where the vacuum pump is. That takes some of the noise out and some of the heat out, and then he can put a fan on it in his garage. His garage is also air conditioned, though. Because if your garage is 95 degrees, you shouldn't be running that vacuum pump in it anyway.
You're going to shorten the life. I mean, heat is bad for any of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So
then you've still got the heat coming off it just through vents, like a big square vent. So that would be harder to vent out, although I'm sure somebody's figured it out.
So it almost sounds like it almost sounds like a simplified central air unit where you've got your compressor and everything on the outside, and it pumps it. Wow. So I didn't know this, and I've already learned like 6 things from you, but so that pump is a separate modular unit so it really is quite the setup.
So here's my first tip.
Yes.
You can buy the base unit with the base pump at the base price. And you can buy an aftermarket oilless pump if you wanted the oilless pump for less than $1,000, which is what the upgrade costs. Now, Harvest Right's not going to guarantee that pump for you, right? But a lot of people do that. And so then they get that upgrade for $500 instead of $1,000 by doing a little extra work. So that's, or you can get a premium, like a different kind of vacuum pump. So there's a whole bunch of aftermarket stuff people have figured out on the freeze dryer. It's like a cult following. Once you get into some of these networks, it's the things people figured out are great.
It's like 3D printing. Everybody has 400 little upgrades that they love to do.
Yeah.
Huh. Brian asked, I was thinking this anyway while we were going along, but I'll bring it up. What kind of power requirements?
That depends on what size unit you get. The large unit requires a dedicated 20 amp breaker.
Okay.
The medium and small, you can have other things on that 20 amp breaker. I would not plug mine into a 15 amp, although you probably could get away with it.
So there's another thought then, because my house has I can install one, or
you can.
Oh, sure, I could. Yes. Anyway.
Yeah, no, you would never do that.
No, I would never install a 50 amp outlet to power my house with a generator either. I would never do that.
No, it'd be a bad idea.
Yeah, bad idea. I would never. No, don't watch my YouTube channel. Okay, because most new houses, or at least the last 10 or 15 years, tend to have 20 amp dedicated circuits
in the kitchen. Yeah.
So
and sometimes in the laundry room too.
Right. Yeah. So for most people, it won't be a problem, but yeah, I was wondering that. So do you know the wattage on them by chance?
Not off the top of my head. I could Google it.
That's okay. I can find it after. So you wouldn't want to, and the only thing you're doing if you could pull it through 15 amp circuit is you're just working it harder anyway, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I had no idea it was even modular. And what about the finishes? Does that matter at all, or is that just
like what color it is?
Yeah. Nah, that's what I figured. I'm just like, because I look at them. So here's how the last 5 years have gone with me.
Yeah.
I tell Becky, I'm like, I want a freeze dryer. She goes, okay. Then I go to Harvest Right and I look at the price and I'm like, oh, I forgot they're that much money. So then I leave. And a year later, I forget how much they are. And I say to Becky again, I want a freeze dryer. So then I go back. Yeah. So finally, I've accepted the fact that goddamn thing's $5,000 in Canada, basically. And I have to know that I either need to make that a zero cost somehow by earning the money doing something else, or turn it into because I know I'm not going to turn it into a business. I have no interest in doing that, at least yet, but I do want one, and I also look at the cost of, so you guys have it pretty rough there for Mountain House and things like that. Try buying fucking Mountain House stuff up here in Canada right now. What you can get is just astronomical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can at least make it pay for itself in a few years, I think.
Yeah, you can. And it's, if you're a person like a homesteader like I am, it will freeze dry your surplus. It's just one more way to process stuff. And that's really cool. So I process milk I don't drink that I get right now because in the winter, goats dry up. And
Right.
so I was all freeze dried milk all winter. And my last jar ended 1 week before milk started again, which was kind of cool, which meant all the money I put into the milk in milk season paid off through the freeze dryer. And the funny thing is I found one more jar like 3 months later that I tricked myself and stuck somewhere funny. And I was like, dang it, I could have made it all the way through.
I thought I was the only one that did that. That's
awesome.
awesome.
No.
So how much do you think you made or saved? First off, I know I've told you before, but I love how you do the whole independence fund and all of that. So how much did you, how much did you save or make just with the goat's milk thing, do you think?
So I calculate a load is probably $10 to run, $8 to $10 to run with the power, a little bit of depreciation for the unit itself, and other materials that go into it. So if I put a $15 gallon of goat's milk in there, and then I freeze dry it, you need to add the $8, right? So then it's
right.
$23. So now I've got $23 a gallon milk that I am eating. So that saved me $0. Except I can't buy goat's milk in the winter. I would have either been buying commercial milk, which is much lower in price, or I don't know, sourcing goat's milk in another state. So for me, it's not so much necessarily the savings and costs, it's a health payoff.
Sure.
So commercial milk makes me retain. Like right now, I have been on some commercial milk, and I am literally up 2 sizes in pants in 1 month from just drinking heavy whipping cream and in my coffee only.
Mm-hmm.
When I stay disciplined on commercial milk, I'll drop about 10 pounds. And I don't think it's fat. I think it's water weight because it'll go off in a week or 2.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, well, what is that doing to me regarding possible development of diabetes, heart conditions? That means my body's inflamed.
Sure.
So in that case, I'm not really saving money, right? When I am freeze drying meat, the total batch cost is less. So if I fry up some ground beef and I do a batch, it's 10 pounds of ground beef in one batch. So if you're getting ground beef at $3 a pound, which is what I pay for grass fed when I buy the whole animal, then I'm adding $8 to that, right? So 3 times 10 is 30. So it's $38 for a batch. And then that 10 pounds did not need to stay in my freezer and my freezer did not have to stay on for the rest of the winter. So you save a little bit on electricity. Like I have actually reduced down to 3 freezers instead of 4. So I'm crazy because I process animals, just understand. But having that shelf stable is cool. And then if I compare my per ounce price to Mountain House, it is cheaper.
Sure. Okay.
So it's about half. And like Mountain House, it's better too because I'm getting this locally hyper sourced, hyper organic beef. And that's actually what convinced me to get the freeze dryer to begin with, is I can take things that I cook and put them in bags, shelf stable, and take them on the road or take them backpacking, and it's healthier.
I was just sent some cheese from our friends there, Nate and Aaron, sorry. And I love it. The Colby Jack freeze-dried cheese. I thought, it's a great snack. Like it really is. It blows me away. And for me, so I have access to local beef here like crazy. And so we buy a side of beef once or twice a year. And my plan really was to just get, a metric shit ton of ground beef and just start running it through it. And I would think, I mean, I'm not going to pay for it in the first year, but I know that would be, it would have to save some money, I'm sure.
It probably will, especially if you could buy the dip.
Yes. Buy it when
so,
it's.
You know, I just did the webinar yesterday on how to can beef, because we're expecting beef prices to go down a little bit this fall because farmers are selling off their breeding stock right now. And that means more cattle into the commercial food system, supply demand, more beef, lower prices. But the other side of that dip is that eventually those farmers who have sold their breeding stock are going to want breeding stock again. And then what?
We went through it. I mean, sorry, not me. My brother-in-law, his family has a farm. And last year it was nip and tuck whether they could get enough hay or enough feed to make sure they got through the winter. Now they did. He got on it real early. But there's a lot of guys who just couldn't get it. I mean, we are having a bumper year for growth here, and it's probably the only place in the continent that's really doing well. But they almost didn't. Yeah, I mean, it was bad, and there's a lot of guys who got rid of a lot of breeding stock, and next year is gonna be not good, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge. Grain crops have failed all over the country, and not country, all over the world. And there have been floods, there have been droughts, and it's just sort of worldwide challenging. And if that scares you, plant a garden.
Yeah.
Because this year your garden will kind of suck, and then by next year your garden will probably be pretty good because you'll learn all your mistakes now. But, you know, having that deep pantry, I think, is really helpful for those times. I don't think you should run around pants on fire panic. No. I just think look at how you're treating your food. And, you know, look sideways at it every time you're pouring it into the garbage can.
Absolute. Figure out another way to use it. And I'm never whatever. I'm never a Chicken Little. The sky's falling. I mean, bad shit happens all the time. But whatever you do now is better than not doing anything.
Yeah.
As long as you're not doing it out of abject fear. You know what I mean? That to me is where, if you're just scared shitless and you're like, here, take my money, make me feel better, I don't think you're not probably making a whole lot of headway there.
So, Tim, I would be lax if I did not mention that if you really want to just pay for your freeze dryer, what you should do is get your hands on some Skittles and freeze dry them and start selling freeze dried candies. Like, go into the whole rabbit. Even if you do not eat candy, start freeze drying candies and sell those. You can sell them for a lot. Okay. First of all, for a small amount. And that is the fastest way to pay off your freeze dryer. The key is to tap the local community, right? Yep.
So what did you do? Did you do that a little? I mean, I saw you did, but yeah.
I did. I tested it, and you make about 100% markup on your inputs, and that allows. And then the minute you post freeze dried Skittles on local networks like Facebook Marketplace, a bunch of candy addicts come out of the woodwork and want to buy it. First of all. People who you never met, and you find yourself meeting them in parking lots like a drug dealer giving them Skittles. Sure. And then they start, like I've had people hit me up about doing custom things, sweets, who knew me that way. If you wanted to invest time in going to farmers markets and that sort of thing, you can make a lot of money. Food law thing.
Right.
It's illegal. That's what you're going to hear. It's totally illegal. That's what you're going to hear. Freeze. And the truth of the matter is, it might be in your state or your province or wherever you are. There may be something about that. If that's what's keeping you from selling the freeze-dried food, then you shouldn't be trying to pay off your freeze dryer you should just put the money in your freeze dryer. The truth of the matter is, a lot of people sell a lot of things that are technically illegal, and they just go rogue.
Absolutely.
That's what they do. In my area, cottage food, I think, because it's a low risk food, it's fine.
Unless you piss off or piss in the wrong cornflakes of the wrong government guy, who's really going to go after you for freeze-dried Skittles? I mean, they could. They're
going to be way more worried about freeze-dried raw pork than freeze-dried Skittles. Absolutely. So know your risk. Like, think about what you're selling, and think about who you're selling to.
I had a discussion with somebody the other day about that, and I said, like, sometimes maybe it's just I don't sell them, but I trade them for things such as currency and crypto. I mean, you just in the way you word it, the way you pay attention, all of that. Yeah, absolutely.
There was a coffee shop guy in COVID in Kentucky who got shut down during shutdowns.
Yep.
But other restaurants could be open because they served food, I think. There was a whole bunch of stuff. But they basically said he could not sell coffee. So he sold coffee cups.
Sure,
and you got free coffee.
Yep.
I think they said he couldn't serve food. He had food trucks parked right across the street from his cafe. Like he just kept finding ways around it. But until you start, you don't know. And it's helpful. I do think it's helpful to look up whatever the regulatory structure is, so you know which one you're pushing and what that looks like.
It doesn't hurt to ask theoretical questions once in a while either.
Yeah.
If you know people that you can ask those questions of, and you're like, okay, what do they look for? What don't they look for? But then stay under the radar. Just don't be out attracting the wrong type of attention. Just do it. Oh yeah, there's no reason not to. I don't think, not even a little bit. Now you got me thinking about the candy thing, because I think my kids would love to do that too.
Yeah. So if you freeze dry candy in your freeze dryer, the thing that you freeze dry after candy gets a little bit of the flavor of the candy. That's important to know. Unless I don't know with the oilless pump if that's true. I know because I use the oil pumps. A little bit of Skittle overtone in your milk isn't bad, but a little bit of Skittle overtone in your chili is a little weird. So just think about the order that you do things. Oil changes help with that. I actually don't have to do an oil change except for once every about 50 runs.
Okay.
But if I do candy, it's dedicated candy oil. And then I do an oil change and I filter that oil for use later, and I put it in a jar, and I label it as the candy oil.
That's a good
because
idea.
the other cool thing about the freeze dryer is people used to just put new oil in every time they did an oil change, but you can filter it and reuse it, which means you don't have to keep buying the oil.
Right. Is it expensive? I mean, it's a cost.
I think it's, I don't know, $20 a gallon or something. Like you don't want to.
How much?
You want to use premium product. The filter that works best to this day is still one that I saw on Freeze Dry. What was it? Retired by 40 is a YouTube channel.
Yep.
And he's on MeWe and Facebook. And I don't know if it was his idea, but I definitely saw him talk about it. It's a what's that called? The water filter. It's the
Berkey?
Not the Berkey, the other one, the Brita.
Brita, okay.
So it's a Brita water filter pitcher, and you take Scott toilet paper and you take the middle out of it and you squish it down so it'll fit in there, and then you pour the oil through that, and it filters all the water and any debris out, and you end up with clean oil on the other side. That works better than the Harvest Right perfect purpose-built filter, even their new one. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I used the Brita years ago when I was making homemade fuel, and it worked okay for anyway, but somebody there said they know somebody that freeze dries Twinkies, pays $5 a box, makes almost $30 profit.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that. And there's when you had Jake on, I was out mowing listening to Jake on here, and he was talking about rolling up, making those little sliced meat cigarettes and things like that. And I was, of course, the old brain's just a going.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this would be great.
I have jars of those and bags of those for on the road. It's like meat chips.
Are they good?
They're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a little bit dry, but that's okay.
Everything is.
Yeah.
So can you take me through? So first time you did whatever. I mean, like a process of actually freeze drying something. What would be a simple? Because everybody says, well, when you start water bath, start with pickles or jam. When
so when you get your freeze dryer, it'll say run a load of bread. And even if you don't eat bread, you run the load of bread. And the reason you run the load of bread is there's a plasticky smell in your freeze dryer that will get absorbed into said bread. Some people do 3 or 4 batches of that.
Okay.
Buy the cheapest, disgusting, like spongy bread that you can. Get it a little bit wet, throw it in there, and you end up with very dry toast consistency bread. People actually freeze dry that bread and store it for later, which confuses me. But
isn't that just breadcrumbs?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They do it and then they spritz it with water to rehydrate it to make sandwiches, and it keeps it from molding, I guess. But I'm like, one could store yeast and flour And one could bake bread later and it would be delicious.
Much better.
Probably more delicious than freeze drying. I think they're thinking in an apocalyptic situation, you don't have time to bake bread.
Okay.
But maybe you do have time to make porridge. So, anyway.
That's like bread in a can. Do you ever see that? There's a guy. Yeah. I don't know. Just not my cup of tea.
Yeah. So you do that and you do oil changes.
Okay.
To get that out, and then you do your first load. And the cool thing about freeze drying with the Harvest Right is there's Betty's Harvest Right freeze dryer group on Facebook, and there's Retired at 40. Between those two groups, and Retired at 40 is on MeWe too, so that's kind of cool. Between those two groups, probably somebody has tried the thing you're asking if you should do it or not, and so they will know what settings you might want to have. So the settings you can adjust are what happens is you freeze the food, and then you drop the vacuum pump puts a vacuum in it. So you drop the pressure in the chamber, and then the trays that the food are sitting on heat under them while it's cold and low pressure around them. And as a result of this, it goes directly from frozen to gas. That's how freeze drying works. And so that heat can be set higher or lower. And if you're doing herbs, for example, you want it lower because they'll retain more flavor.
Okay.
If you do candy, I believe you want it, I can't remember if it's higher or lower. But so you go look at the temperature other people have figured out, and here's why. If you do the wrong temperature for something that can melt like candy or marshmallows, you may end up with a total weird, messy failure. Or you may end up with, or it'll be perfect because you looked it up, and it's worth looking it up before you start.
Okay. Learn from
if
other
things
people.
Are high in fat, they do not freeze dry well. Butter does not freeze dry well.
Okay.
So people always ask, can I do butter? Can I do bacon? Can. But you're going to end up with melted butter because it's fat doesn't dry. It's just fat. And so when you do a greasy thing, like I did cheese, I did a variety of cheese that was greasier than other cheese. And it was Havarti. Havarti, when I took it out, it was slimy from the oils and the cheese. And what I figured out is put a paper towel under it. That absorbs the oils. And then you have that same like cheese crouton, which is what freeze-dried cheese is like, is a cheese crouton. And so those are the things that you can find out. If you do milk with too high of a temperature, or not, if it does not freeze all the way, and then the sublimation process starts, milk will explode everywhere, causing you to have to take everything out of there and clean everything. It makes a huge mess. So you want to make sure your milk is frozen 100%. That means in the settings, you can say freeze for a longer period of time before you go into the sublimation process, or I put mine in the freezer and tray so it's pre-frozen. So if we talk about the process, the first decision you make is, am I putting something in that will freeze here and then go through the process, or do I pre-freeze it? Those are two choices that you make. Then you put your trays in, whether they're pre-frozen or not, program it, hit start, and then you walk away. And it will be done, and then you will dry it for even longer. And then you will eventually say, okay, let's give it a shot. Pull it out, see if it's all dehydrated. And the way you know that is you touch it. If it feels cool, then it's not.
Okay.
It needs to feel, because that's like evaporation happening. Some people have moisture meters that they can test it with. I just put one of those cheap Walmart like food service gloves on that's plastic, not rubber, that are, they're big, really big. And I feel it. What I don't want to do is put my disgusting oily hand on there and have that oil sucked into the food.
Right.
So I do that. And then if it's not cold, I'll take it out and start bagging it. And if during bagging I find a cold spot, I'll actually put it all back in the trays and start the dry cycle for longer.
Really? So
so sometimes you'll be drying stuff for 3 days. Like blueberries took me 3 days here.
Really?
Yeah, and those have to be pricked first so that they're opened up a little bit. But anything that has seeds like strawberries or blueberries just takes a really long time. Tomatoes take a really long time. Honey will not. Okay, the other thing that does not freeze dry well is sugar. Too much sugar. So with Skittles, they've figured out the heat dial in, but there's in Skittles, I think you have sugar and cornstarch probably is most of the base ingredients. That's what I would guess is in there, and that offsets the sugar enough. Honey does not freeze dry.
So it will just sit there indefinitely, I suppose.
Apparently, it just turns into a weird sticky mess.
Okay.
It'll be a slightly different sticky mess than it was when you put it in the tray. Because I was really excited. I know Adam. I was really excited, Adam, to do honey, and then I realized I can't do honey.
Well, yeah. What about heavy cream? Is that doable?
So I've heard mixed results. I've never tried heavy cream. I've done milk.
Okay.
I have heard mixed results on heavy cream. Some people say yes. Some people say no. It's high in fat. So it's sort of on the border. And what happens with higher fat things is the fat goes rancid over time. So I think it's one of those things that you can, but you can't store it for 20 years because the fat is still there and it can still go rancid. Likewise with bacon.
Okay.
You can freeze dry it. It will go rancid. That fat line on a pork chop, you can freeze dry it. It will go rancid.
You haven't had, I mean, I know you've only been a year, but you haven't had anything go off on you yet?
I've had things. So the way I've known that I've made mistakes is when I open a package and it's not still dry, it's squishy.
Oh, okay.
That means it wasn't dry enough.
Right.
And then I don't eat that and I don't feed it to my animals because what can happen in an oxygen-free, moist environment that has not been properly sterilized is botulism can grow unless it's high acid, right? So if it's watermelon, it's less likely to be a problem, but I just don't mess with it at that point. So I've made a few mistakes there. Like I did watermelon was one where the seeds, you try to get all the seeds out. You can never get all the seeds out of watermelon that has seeds in it. And the seeds just weren't dry and they put moisture back into the whole thing. And I actually have a can, like a jar with improperly freeze dried watermelon that I show people. I'm like, this is how you can tell. I just left it.
What's it done now? Has it?
It's just like it's solid in there, and like if I have garlic that I freeze dried, that if you shake it, it shakes. Really? The watermelon's like obviously a solid mass, all stuck to each other.
But we all make mistakes, you know.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a learning experience. You're gonna have failures no matter what, and it's important to know how to identify those.
What are the easiest things to freeze dry?
I would have to say just about everything's easy to freeze dry. That can freeze dry. So it's with milk. The key that I found to success with milk is to pre-freeze it. Jake Robinson doesn't do that. He freezes it in his. Okay. But so either way you go, you put the tray where the tray is going to be for freezing, either in the freeze dryer or in your freezer, and then you pour for a medium freeze dryer. You pour 1 quart per tray. Okay. Yeah. Did you have to do math on that, or do you guys do gallons?
No, I'm good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. How many trays?
You got 4 trays, so 1 gallon per load. Yep. But if you pour it in the freezer, then you don't have to juggle this liquidy, spilly, giant tray, right? So you have it in there, you pour the milk, and then I bought tray separators. Okay. So I can stack them on top of each other. I'll put the next tray on, I'll put the next quart of milk in, next tray, next quart of milk. And then and then I let it freeze, and then I can move the trays to my freeze dryer. If you're doing it in your freeze dryer, you put the tray in with just a little edge sticking out, pour the milk when it's in the freeze dryer so you don't, because it's I mean, like you're talking about a tray that's 2 feet by, I don't know, 8 inches wide. Right. Like imagine that full of liquid trying not to spill that all over everything. I can't accomplish that. That's not my skill. I'm thinking I'd probably spill even trying to pour it in gently once it's in the. Yeah. So have you had anything just blow up? Like you said, milk can do that. Did that happen to you at all? Or no, I've never had a blow up experience. What I have had is a melting experience. I tried to freeze dry Reese's Pieces, and what happened because peanut butter was high in fat. Right. You don't freeze heat peanut butter. I should have cued in that Reese's Pieces are peanut butter, but I was just doing all sorts of different candies. It was just a melted solid mass of Reese's Pieces with bits of candy, like the candy coating and mush. And my mom actually took it out. She thought she had done something wrong because she ran that load. And I was like, no, it was the peanut butter. But she like ate little corners that she'd chip off for a while when she wanted candy. I finally gave it to the pigs.
So I guess probably the fat being in there wouldn't have stored very long, but could you have broke it up like a brittle and put it in a jar for a while?
It wasn't brittle. It was literally like I had taken Reese's Pieces, melted them into a mass, and it was like a Reese's Pieces bar.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was still edible. It just was it was not sellable.
Yeah. Oh.
I was envisioning puffy Reese's Pieces that crunch in your mouth. I thought that'd be pretty cool.
I think I was on Zello the day you were first talking about that.
Yeah.
I think because Leos and I are both peanut butter and chocolate fans. So I remember having that conversation. So
now Reese's peanut butter cups might freeze dry. I don't know. Chocolate does not freeze dry well, and that's got a little bit of chocolate in it, but that's something I'd go look up before doing. Reese's Pieces, I could not find any literature on it, and then I failed, and then I looked again, and there were all these people with pictures of terrible failures of the Reese's Pieces.
It's funny. I do the same thing sometimes. I don't find the failures until after I screw up and do something. And then I'm like, oh, it was in Google. I just didn't look hard enough or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you store it in after? So you pull it all out, and do you have to let it, you don't want it to sit and dry too long once it comes out?
You don't pull it out and let it have access to air, or it will rehydrate itself.
Okay.
So it's really important to keep it separate from oxygen, from air, basically, and humidity in the air once it's done going. And that means that you either put it in a sealed Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber or a moisture absorber, depending where you are, or I vacuum seal them in mason jars.
Okay.
I actually store most of mine in mason jars now because I can't see in a Mylar bag. And then if I want it for traveling, I transfer it to a Mylar bag for traveling.
Okay. Did you see that thing with Amazon the other day?
Yeah.
Mylar? Yeah. So it sounds like, the SOE's on here. Hey, John. But it sounds like it's going to be, I think our standard silver ones are still good.
You just can't have the ones with the windows.
Yes.
Because drugs.
I know, right? Drugs.
So I'm out of that. I'm completely out of the drug world. Like, what are they selling in Mylar bags with windows that are illicit drugs? Out of care, is it like edibles?
Okay. So in Canada, where everything, of course, as soon as the government took over the drugs, it became way over packaged. So it was in a bag, in a jar, in a box, right? All three. But I would assume things like mushrooms or edibles or, and
putting it in a Mylar bag without a window changes your ability to sell magic mushrooms. How?
I don't know. First, I thought, I know, right? At first I thought it would be that they didn't want anything. So I guess a lot of the multicolored packages, because it appeals to kids. I don't know. And Mylar, of course, makes it possible to not smell, even though drug dogs can still smell in a Mylar bag. I don't know. Just something that they're doing to feel good about themselves, I guess.
Yeah, so I saw that, and my first thought was, is it edibles? And they look like candy through the window, but then what about the candy manufacturers through the window?
I don't know. You know what? I even messaged Amazon because I figured there was going to be enough people that are going to be asking. I wanted to have some straight answers for people, and their customer service is horrible at the best of times. So,
they don't know.
Yeah, they don't. They'll read the article and then they'll come back and say, "Oh yeah, that's it." I'm like, "Okay, have a good day." So, is sunlight an issue? So you said
so just like all foods that you store, cool, dark place.
Okay.
So not in direct sun. The Mylar cuts the light out. I did see a question about, can you use regular vacuum seal bags? You can. They don't last as long. What happens with those is there is some transference, if it's not 7 mils of Mylar, some transference of oxygen into the bag no matter what on those bags. And so eventually what will happen is they will rehydrate in the bags. They don't store. So I store them in those if I'm just going to have it for a month.
Okay.
I'll just grab a cheaper bag and do that because it doesn't matter. But I did some tests on that, and indeed, over time it becomes a problem. So
what are some things that you wish you knew before you bought one? And I'm sure you do a lot of I think you do, don't you? Quite a bit of research for things.
Yeah, I did not properly research the heat output and the requirement for where I would run it. And I had seen Chef Brett's unit run before I bought mine. I had seen John Willis's unit run, and it didn't occur to me, A, he has the oilless pump. B, he's in a giant air-conditioned building, and it's not like in his living room, right?
Right.
Where it's running. It's near their kitchen, and it's not annoying. So I thought I'll put it in the roasting shack. It's food processing. Perfect, right?
Yeah.
Roasting shack had no air conditioning at that time. I ran my first load in probably May of 2021, May or June, somewhere in that range. And it became so unbearably hot in there. I was like, there's no way I can roast coffee and do this, because my roaster also puts heat out. It put out more heat than my roaster.
Seriously.
Wow. And then I figured out you can run, then I read about this. So I think the biggest thing is be really sure you know where it's going to be. And so what I did is I moved it out of the roasting shack into my carport area that you've seen.
Yep.
It was just outside, and it's cooler outside, and I had a fan on it. And when it got too hot outside, I just didn't run it. So I didn't run it for 2 months in the summer. Okay. This summer has been different. It's been hotter, so it's been a longer time. I haven't been able to run it. And then the things I wanted to process in the summer, I prepared and froze. If it needed to be blanched, I blanched it and froze it. So I just had it frozen in different ways in my freezer, in ways I could bring it out and have it lay thin. So you don't want a big old thick Ziploc. It's got to be thin on those trays. And waited until winter when I could just run it nonstop because it's colder. And then I ended up for the winter moving it into my prepper pantry as a way to keep it from freezing in there.
That's a great idea. Why not?
Yeah, because then you're just harnessing the heat, and yeah.
I don't think I mean, I'm not stupid, but I guess I never realized that it's basically a mini heat pump or a mini it's a compressor. So it's, it's turning heat to cold and cold to heat or whatever.
Yeah.
You want to work through some of these questions? I got a bunch.
Sure, let's go through some questions.
All right. So let's see. Oh, well, the first one was kind of what you already talked about. What if you freeze everything during the harvest season?
That's 100% what you do, because even if you're running the freeze dryer, if you have a really productive garden, your freeze dryer is not keeping up with what's coming out of your garden. And if that's the way you're going to process it, then you will end up needing to have room in your freezer and to pre-freeze things. I've got 4 loads of blueberries in my freezer right now in Ziplocs that are ready to go as soon as I'm ready to freeze dry them. I prioritize milk and egg loads over something like blueberries, just because I get more bang for the buck to have those out of my way and out of my freezer. Blueberries I can toss around in a Ziploc bag. Liquid is like a giant ice cube that's not not something I can move around or shift or shape. Blueberries make better freezer Tetris, in other words.
Yeah, I get it. Is there a good transition, not product, but item to put through after you've done something like, you said Skittles and stuff can get in the smell. Is there something that you
could do another load of bread if you just want it. And that the bread load takes like 8 hours. It doesn't take 2 days, right? I will just, after Skittles, I do milk. Okay. After garlic, I do eggs, because if my eggs taste garlicky, I don't care.
Okay.
Just, I'm making them into breakfast eggs. I'm not making them into bakey eggs. So
what do you think of the finished product with the eggs, like when you rehydrate and cook them?
I like the finished product of eggs. I served them at my workshop and nobody knew.
Awesome.
Until we told them. We did mix them a little bit with eggs. I think they're just because they were using what was ever at hand. It depends on how you rehydrate it. So I've been rehydrating them with cold water. Erin Lemister, who is in our network, she said she prefers to have the water a little bit warm when she rehydrates them for the mouthfeel later. So I did notice the mouthfeel is a little thin. So I'm going to try warm water next time.
Huh. Did you ever, years ago, Becky and I tried dehydrating eggs. We made they were almost unpalatable. It was like trying to eat sand, it was so bad. We tried, but it just, So
you're like, if I'm starving, I will totally eat that.
Yeah. And that's where it went, in a mason jar up in the cupboard. And I'm like, it's there just in case. And no, didn't do it for me. So we kind of talked about this, but if you want to touch on it quick again, how much does it cost?
So you're looking $2,500, $3,500, $4,500. You can go $5,500. The choice that you make when you get a freeze dryer is small, medium, or large from Harvest Right. And then There are 2 pumps to choose from. They used to have 3, but I think they have 2 now. And the base model with the base pump is going to be a little bit less than the one with the oilless pump. The oilless pump was about $1,000 extra. So if you have a $2,500 base model and then you upgrade to the oilless pump, that becomes $3,500. I think the small is actually $1,500 starting, unless all of their prices has gone up, which is also possible. Like, I haven't looked in a month or two. And then the sort of new manufacturer of freeze dryers will have different price points, but I have not looked at them, nor can I remember their name. So if John Willis wants to type that in here, he probably knows because he's the one who pointed it out to me.
That'll be an interesting experiment. I wouldn't mind getting my hands, well, whatever, trying a new one. But so here I'm thinking, so we have in Canada kind of like, I don't know what you want to call it, the Canada tax. So everything, even though after the exchange rate, things are still more expensive up here. So I now have an American mailing address. So I'm almost wondering if it might be worth buying it, bringing it to the border, and then going down and getting it myself. I don't know. Yeah.
How do they feel about expensive things coming over the border?
Usually you have to pay a little bit of duty. It all depends.
Yeah.
So I'll research and see which way, but I still think I might be in the positive by doing that, because
I feel like if you bought it and
I know
used it, or somebody else bought it and used it and then resold it to you as a used unit, that your price would be different on the way over the border.
100%.
Like if you get a used one, you know what I mean?
I love the way you think, Nicole. Totally. Yep. The same way I might just have to buy a couple Harbor Freight generators. Yes, yeah. Totally get it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're always thinking. That's good. Oilless pump worth the extra cost? Or do you know?
So the thing you get with the oilless pump is, I think the problem I have with the skittle cross contamination goes away. So that's a thing. Okay. And then not having to spend the time changing the oil. So that's a huge bonus. Is it worth the extra cost? It depends on how much your time is worth to you.
Right. Because
eventually I will have an oilless pump, but right now it's not my priority for budget.
How much time does it take to change the oil, filter the oil, that kind of stuff?
I have it set up so it takes less than 2 minutes of my time to change the oil.
Oh, so
but there will be maintenance someday where I have to take the whole pump apart and scrub everything out, and that's probably going to take me an hour or two. So like eventually you clean the parts inside where the oil is. But you dump the oil, you pour the new oil in, and you're done. And it takes half an hour for the oil to drain, but I'm not sitting there for half an hour. I have it set up to drain into a thing, and I walk away. Like when I have to change the oil, load finishes, oil is still hot, so it's more viscous at that time. So I'll open it up and drain it, walk away, package the food, and then when I know that I don't need to run more dry time, actually at that point I wouldn't run more dry time. I'd have to finish the oil change to run more dry time. But then I'll put it through the defrost cycle, which takes 2 hours for it to defrost because there's ice in there when you take on the outside of the vacuum chamber unit. So then I'll put the oil in, close it up, and it's ready to go. So it's just part of it's just like there's a step, I do other things, there's another step, and I'm done. And then it's draining straight into my pitcher for filtering, and I put that off to the side because it'll take it a day or two to filter that oil to go through.
So I had to highlight this comment because I've never been told this before, but apparently Tim looks like Garth Brooks. So thank you. Years ago, they used to say John Goodman, but that made my day. So thank you very much. Don't sound like him, but that is.
Yeah, especially not today.
Oh my God, no, thank you. So I got a bunch. This one, I guess, is for me, but we'll talk about what if someone installed a freeze dryer and some okay, yeah, in their boat and decided to sell them to you when they visit. Yes, exactly, sure. Yep, I thought.
Yeah, I totally. Running a freeze dryer on a boat sounds like a wonderful idea.
I was thinking maybe and also to sounds like
pre-frozen if you do that.
So, okay, talking about frozen, why don't you freeze everything? So you said you prefer to freeze things like milk ahead of time. Jake doesn't necessarily, but wouldn't it be cheaper to pre-freeze in your freezer since you're already using your freezer? Or I
pre-freeze almost everything. The two times I have not pre-frozen One was basil I had just harvested that I just needed out of my way.
Okay.
And it didn't take very long to freeze that in the freeze dryer. And the other time was that batch of blueberries I did this year. And it took for flipping ever for that. It took like an extra day, I think, for that load because of freezing those. So for me, I always prefer pre-frozen for two reasons. It's ready to go when it's ready to go. So I have a pipeline built up. And then it just, I don't know. I prefer the process time to be shorter in the freeze dryer.
Well, that's what I was. Okay.
I'm already running my freezer.
Right.
I'm not running a dedicated pre-freeze freezer, right? So I'm already running my freezer.
I mean, and who doesn't? You almost always have a little bit of space somewhere you can find in a freezer.
Except for right now, yes, this is true.
Do you ever do I know you do, but the freezer Tetris thing where you go back in and restack everything and
Yeah, we're doing that soon. Yeah.
Yeah. We a couple times a year too. I think I've probably adopted your process for it.
Well, so here's what happened. The power went out. And I had 4 freezers going. One was half full, and it was the ice cream style without insulation on top. And it was hot as could be outside. So Mom was here, and she goes, what do we need to do? And, it's not dark yet. So, like, all our neighbors go into powers out mode. Like, everybody just doesn't talk to each other, and we start doing stuff. And I said, well, I need to not have that freezer be out there because we're going to just have to run a Jenny on it the whole time if I leave stuff in that freezer. So I need to find somewhere to put half a chest freezers full of stuff. And, meanwhile, Nighthawk and Tactical are doing generator-related things or livestock-related things because the electric fences don't work when you don't have power. Actually, we have one now that does because it's running off battery. But you see where that goes, right? Making sure the pigs didn't get out. And so I go out there. I'm like, I just start. And then Mom shows up. And then Nighthawk shows up. And we condensed from 4 freezers down to 3 plus house freezers plus other people's freezers in the holler. And then we took my generator. I have a Honda that's like 2,900.
Yeah.
Which you can run a few freezers at a time with that. And I can start it, which makes me happy. It's a full start. Happy. Yeah. So I was like, okay, everybody, let me start my own generator because usually they start it. I'm like, I need to prove I can do this because one day you won't be here. And we got the freezers going after having them all open to make sure they were cooled down. Cooled off the inside fridge after pulling a few things out of there that I knew we'd use for the rest of the day. And then I think I sent it over to Nighthawks for him to do the same thing with his freezer that he had put stuff in. So now there is zero room in any freezer because I literally Tetrised everything in there and I know where nothing is at this point.
That's the worst. So we have 3 freezers as well, and one's the big meat one, one's the vegetables, and then one's the everything else. So sometimes it's full, sometimes but I get it.
So it's fine. So I really want to go back through and reorganize. Actually, this weekend I have a friend who I buy a cow with. She came and took a big bunch of her meat out. So now I actually do. I have like a window in one freezer. Somebody told me the other day, do you ever feel like reorganizing your house is like a puzzle with one piece empty here? And every time you do something, you're moving that blank place around. And that's like I was like, that's exactly how my freezers feel right now.
Junk drawers, right? Becky and I will do the kitchen and we'll just basically, it'll be a half a day. You'll clean everything out. 3 items will go to this new storage space. 3 items will go to that one.
Yeah.
And then it's like a mad, it's off. It's fun.
Yeah.
So Becky happened to pop on here. She must be, she wants to know if this show is my secret agenda to finally get a freeze dryer.
It's not very secret, is it?
I'm pretty open about it. She missed the opening. So what else we got here? Here we go. Can you dry different items at the same time?
Yes, you can. Should you dry multiple different items at the same time? That depends. If they are similar to each other in moisture content, size, and how long it takes them, yes. If not, what happens is you're going to wait for that slowest tray to be done. Okay. So some people will do onions and garlic in the same one, and that'll work out okay. The other thing is there is some cross flavor contamination. So if you do onions and strawberries together, what you're going to end up is with oniony strawberries and strawberry onions. So you just want to think about what goes with what. But I will do multiple types of stew. So I may have a chicken stew one week and have enough left over for one tray. And then a beef stew the next week, and then a pork stew the next week. And I will do each tray as a different stew.
So can you talk a little more about, I mean, I'm sure it's pretty simple, but so do you just literally take your leftovers and dump them on a tray and freeze it? Geez, that is deadly simple. And
It's
then
deadly simple.
have you rehydrated that yet?
Oh, yeah, it's pretty good. The one thing that rehydrated a little weird in one of my stews was the carrots, and I think it's time. I think it needed more time with the liquid. So they were a little, they were not quite rehydrated all the way when I poured the hot water in.
Okay.
And then the other thing is how much water to put in. You think you're going to have to add a lot more water than you have to add when you rehydrate a stew. So it's better to do little bits at a time than other people are more scientific about this, and they figure out exactly how much water came out by weighing it, and then they weigh their water, and they're like, 1 cup of water goes into. Yeah, that is not how I operate. I'm like,
I'm a geek, but not that big of a geek.
Yeah.
I get it.
If I was backpacking, I might actually care about that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. For people like, that would be.
On the other hand, when I'm backpacking, I will eat something that's not ideally rehydrated because I'm hungry.
Right. Everything tastes good when you're out in the woods. Yeah. I just love the, I guess I never thought about, again, I guess just not high fat leftovers, that kind of thing, but
yeah,
stews or goulashes. What about, what about noodles? That's probably
people do dehydrate spaghetti with noodles in it, but
okay.
the better way to go is store your noodles dry.
Right. As soon as I said it, I thought
that. And then dehydrate the sauce. But I could see, I mean, I know people have tried it and been successful. I think the noodles lose some of that al dente feel.
Sure.
As part of it. Like anything you get out of that's been freeze dried has been frozen.
Right. That makes sense. And even though maybe not, it doesn't seem to be as destructive as traditional, well, I guess maybe the rehydrating method. I'm not sure. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be totally destroyed like some things are when they come out of the freezer.
Yeah.
So can you freeze dry high fat things like bacon and keep it from going rancid by freezing? Less room in the freezer. Oh, okay.
It won't take less room in the freezer. It will take the same amount of room in the freezer
because it's not really shrinking.
It's not really shrinking. So it's you could do that, but you might as well just put your base bacon in the freezer. It's going to go rancid in the freezer at the same rate your bacon goes rancid in the freezer. Okay,
so you're not.
I might freeze dry bacon if I was going to go on a backpack to have it more shelf stable, like cook it, freeze dry it, have it last longer in the bag in my backpack for a 2-week trip. I might do that.
You'd get away with that, wouldn't you? I'm sure.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks in a bag if it were freeze dried should be okay, I would think. I mean, this is not advice, but it could be. How about regular clear sous vide style vacuum sealer? Oh yeah, we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, so that's that for short term, sure. Short term being a month or two. And there's a risk that that there will be passed through. The 7 mil Mylar, man. The 7 mil Mylar works great. And then mason jars, from what I understand, the mason jars don't last as long for storage as Mylar sealed with an O2 absorber in it. But that's assuming you don't kick around your Mylar bags like I do, and I do kick around my I keep moving because I'm always moving stuff. So that's just how I handled them. But my goal with freeze dried food is not 20 years of storage. It's just like my goal always is. I want to process the surplus and use it when I have a dearth of whatever it is, and so I want to use it within 2 years anyway, personally.
So you don't have any goals of having any real long-term kind of stuff, or
I have a long-term process here that is growing the food. That's my goal. I mean, I have some things that can store that long, but the intention is to use them.
That's cool. So it's more of an adjunct or an add-on to your normal food processing.
Yeah, and I will keep grains, which I don't eat. I will keep grains around longer because those are intended as refugee rations, basically, or I was a source of wheat when my family across the country couldn't get it in 2020. I had it, and I'm like, I'll grind it and just mail it to you.
Yeah. We were a source of many things for people across the country as well, including local people for toilet paper. So,
nobody ever took me up on an offer of toilet paper, but I offered a number of people. I'm like, if you really need it, I can give you some.
Yeah. We we had a couple people came that needed some, and yeah, no problem. And then masks and sanitizer we sent across the country, and I sent some sanitizer to my dad, and I also threw a jar of honey in there, and he thought the honey was sanitizer, and he got it all over his fingers. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Wait, I was trying to sanitize him. Bad idea.
Oh, damn it. I know it's a natural disinfectant or antiseptic, but it's a little slower working. So what lasts longer, freeze-dried or dehydrated?
They say.
They.
Nicole does not know. Nicole has not tested. They say that freeze-dried lasts 20 to 25 years. Dehydrated food doesn't, because there's still some moisture left in it. When you freeze dry, you're getting every bit of moisture out of that. 100%. Like, you want that dry.
Right.
Yeah. They say that freeze-dried lasts longer.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we will. I don't know.
I mean, people have opened freeze-dried stuff that's 20 years old.
Well, there's guys that eat MREs that are 60, 70 years old on YouTube, and they don't die, I guess. You know, haven't yet.
Die. Anyway. Some of them actually apparently say they taste good.
Yeah. Have you had to run your freeze dryer during a power outage yet?
Oh yeah, it's been through a power outage. What happens in a power outage is it turns off.
Oh.
That totally happened. That power outage that I did the freeze dryer was doing blueberries. And then it turned back on when the power came back on, and it said power outage.
Oh.
And it said that so that if I had been dehydrating something I was worried about going bad, if it warmed up during the process, I could do that.
Right.
I could deal with it, right? Blueberries I was not worried about. And the blueberries turned out fine. So the power was out from 6 o'clock at night till 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, which is, so those blueberries defrosted during that time, I'm sure. But that wasn't enough time for nasties to grow.
So then you just
blueberries
start the process over again?
Yeah, if it had been meat,
right,
or milk or eggs, I would have taken those trays out, and they would have also gone into the freezer Tetris, and I would have just thrown them in the freezer and kept them frozen.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you run it off a generator at all? Probably not then. Hey?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I was
you
just
have to leave the generator on for 36 hours.
That is very true. Yeah. Because that's what I was wondering. I think it would be a fairly high electricity use. You know, it would take up a fair bit of capacity, right?
Yeah.
It says, could you use, I'm thinking that's supposed to be tin cans, like freeze-dried foods come in. Would they last as long as Mylar?
You could totally, if you have one of those canners, which I forget what they're called right now, you could totally put freeze-dried food in there. I'd probably Mylar bag them, then put them in the can.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know anybody that has one of those canners? I've always been intrigued by them.
I know of somebody who has one in the Camden area.
Okay.
So it's not where you're going. It's actually somebody else. But I have not used one.
Okay.
I'm thinking about getting one to put green coffee beans in for shipping.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Those will last a long time, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you know James from over on PBN. He's the CEO of Prepper Broadcast Network. He has Disaster Coffee, and he sells green beans. Like, I think it's 5-pound packs or something. So that's cool. Yeah, I was wondering about that. That would look really nice on a shelf, and it would store quite well. I think.
I mean, I did just buy some. So freeze-dried foods went on sale on Amazon last week from a farm. I can't remember what brand. It starts with an A. Augustin went on sale, and so like it was about, in many cases, 25 to 50% off retail. And John Willis saw it, and he did a video about it, and a bunch of other people were showing what was on sale. And so I was like, well, what would I actually? So here's why I would want a number 10 can of freeze-dried food. A, it doesn't weigh very much, so easily transportable.
Yep.
B, what would I want? Powdered butter.
Yes.
Powdered butter, that was on sale. And then I was like, the chicken fettuccine. Why do I want chicken fettuccine as a keto person? Because when I'm sick AF, I like, even my canned foods, unless there's somebody here to cook for me, I have about enough energy to put something in the microwave and hit go, So with that, I can hit the kettle and then I have a little bit of food. And at that point, I'm 0% worried about if I get carbs or not. When I'm sick like that, I'm just like, I'm going to eat 2 spoonfuls of whatever it is. And then I'm gonna go. Although when I had COVID, I ate only beef.
Really?
I ate only beef. I put it through the pressure cooker. Actually, okay, no, there were some onions in there because you have to live your life a little bit, and some salt. But I didn't have any carbs, any vegetables, any dairy product of any kind, so that I could detox my system as much as possible. And I was really sick of roast beef by the end of that week.
I can believe it.
Literally roast beef every meal. But every meal was like, it's not like I didn't want to eat that much when I was sick until I got through it. And then I was ridiculously hungry.
I got halfway up the stairs last night after my episode, and I realized I never hit publish on the episode. And I'm like, oh no.
You're like screw it.
I did. I wandered. I waddled back. I just kind of worked my way down. I'm like, oh, okay, hit it,
Breath,
and then I'm like, take a minute, But yeah, it wasn't too bad. But
yeah.
If anybody has any other questions out there, feel free to throw them up. Don't throw them up, but put them in all caps or whatever. But any other, I don't know, like tips or tricks or anything to kind of get people excited?
So I think that Jake Robinson actually really helped me out when I first got my freeze dryer. He was so excited for me, and that's the way we make fun of him all the time. He's a super empowering guy. He's like, I want to call you and tell you all the things, and so he calls me and he's like, for the medium freeze dryer, 15 eggs per tray. 1 quart of milk per tray. These heat settings. He told me about the toilet paper filter and that you could filter your oil. And he told me that if you put a fan oriented on the vacuum pump, your loads will go faster and you won't get a heat warning on it. And those 5 things. And then he told me about the Betty's Harvest Right freeze dryer group and Retired at 40. Oh, and with that little tips pack, that was all I needed to get started. And then at that point, are you the kind of person that's willing to try something or not? Right. Just do it. Go do it. So this year, one of the farmers market farmers looked at me and just said, my broccoli is going to bolt this week. And I was like, how much do you have? He's like, about a row. It's like, how much can I get that for? About $1 a plant. So I sent Tactical out to go get it.
Yep.
And he filled the entire back of my Chevy Tahoe full of broccoli plants that they just ripped out of the ground. They didn't even cut that. So it was like dirt everywhere. There was Tactical, put a moving blanket down so he doesn't get the total frowny face. But there was dirt everywhere back there because the roots were hanging off with whatever dirt clods. I spent the rest of that afternoon making my house full of dirt because it was just coming off the roots. And I blanched it and sliced it. And then I sliced it and then blanched it. And then froze it on trays.
Yep.
Or anything I could find. I used cookie sheets. And then you put it thin on a cookie sheet. And a cookie sheet is as long as one of my trays. And then you make the little air gap down the middle. And so then when that became a broccoli ice cube that would fit perfectly in a tray. And I got those all into the freezer and I started freeze drying it. And I have 6 half-gallon jars of freeze dried broccoli. Did I know if I even liked freeze dried broccoli? No. I was just like, let's see what happens. And so I tasted it and it tastes more broccoli than broccoli. It's like crunchy broccoli. And if I would have put salt and garlic on it, it would make a really good road snack. Oh. I rehydrated something. The mouthfeel is fine. It tastes al dente at that point if you just rehydrate it with a little hot water. So now I have all that broccoli that I got for $1 a plant.
Man, you could put that I'm thinking a Ziploc bag, sprinkle a little salt and garlic powder or whatever on it, shake it all up. You got trip chips, for your
way healthier than potato chips at the store or those hickory sticks you sent me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well,
they were delicious.
They're good. I'm glad I only said, I think a bag, right?
There's only one bag and it was gone.
Okay.
I was like, I'm just going to taste this. I'm above this. I'm like, not above this.
Alice was so proud. She picked everything out for you. And she's like, I can't wait to send her hickory sticks. All my
ketchup American chips were just weird.
They are. They're sweet and tangy. I don't know. What would you call it?
Weird. I mean, they indeed taste like ketchup.
They do, but they're not off-putting. Now, of course, I grew up with them, so it's different, right? But
yeah.
Jaggy from across the pond says hello too. But so
Hi, Jaggy.
Becky's asking, so I'm going to answer this question so that other Canadians out there might know. I brought it up in the background. So there's a couple, juicerville.ca and goodtogoco.ca seem to be the go-to places in Canada to buy them, because Harvest Right doesn't have, I don't think they have an actual Canadian website from what I've told, but have
Possible.
found.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, they're out of Utah.
Right.
Guess why?
Yeah, it's just, gee, I wonder why, And what do we got there? Brett. Oh, hey, Chef Brett, how are you? Says, I know a few folks that have done the dry canning with auction absorbers and desiccants. And my nephew's on here. Got to shout him out too. Hey, Nathan, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Nathan.
Sorry. Yeah, so I don't know, anything, any of the other kind of stuff that you've done with it, or anything let's try this. How about anything you haven't tried yet that you're excited to try?
There's all sorts of stuff. So I've done ground beef, and I've done stews that I cook, and that is 100% of the meat I've done. So I'm really interested to do raw steak.
Yeah.
And what I've heard is if you do raw steak, it's shelf stable, and then you rehydrate it. It's like a steak, and it just cooks, and you can't even tell. I've heard the same with pork chops. The other thing I've heard is if you cook a steak to, say, rare or medium rare,
yep,
and then you rehydrate it again, it comes back in that state. So out of curiosity, I'm going to compare raw steak to a cooked steak and see what is the quality, again, for my backpacking world. Or, like I was on this trip to Texas last time, and I brought a bunch of freeze-dried food. I just didn't want it. And I was like, what I wanted was a steak. And so I went out and found a steak. I'm like, I could have had a steak with me, maybe. So I'm going to play with some of the freeze drying of meat, because I do have 3 freezers full of meat. We just did our chickens for the year. So one freezer is 100% chicken right now. Actually, there's some Tetris pork. There's Tetris bacon packets in there. But you know what I mean. It's basically chicken.
Yeah.
And that happens every year, and I'm just going to get that chicken eaten down, and venison's going to come in because hunting season's going to start. So there's this constant rotation. If I can freeze dry some of that meat, that's not bad. I mean, I just canned 10 pounds of beef yesterday as part of that canning workshop. So that's another little square. It's another puzzle piece. I now have 2 puzzle pieces. I have my friend came puzzle piece, and in a totally different freezer, there's another puzzle piece open.
I just throw that up. Mr. Ike says that Canadian Prepper also sells them, so that's good to know.
I have an affiliate link if anybody decides to buy one. Yes. Let me get that to you.
Yes, throw it up in the comments there.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, David Siegler wants to know what your biggest failure's been. Maybe we touched on that, but
really the biggest failure, besides that watermelon that I never got to eat, was the melting of the Reese's Pieces. And I already had 20 pounds of Reese's Pieces on hand. So then and I don't eat much candy. And if I do, it's not Reese's Pieces. Mm-hmm. So like I spend my candy chits on chocolate, because chocolate is superior to Reese's Pieces. So that was really the biggest issue.
Okay.
There. So nothing else has been that horrible. I know. I mean, I've seen people with the milk explosion. I've seen marshmallows puff way up. So I've seen people do Peeps wrong, and the Peeps got so big that they exploded marshmallow everywhere. So you just gotta be careful, man. That's the deal.
Have you tried coffee yet? Because
so Chef Brett did coffee for me once, and it tastes pretty good.
Okay.
But it's a lot of liquid. Like, it really shrinks down, right? If you think about what coffee is.
Yeah.
So for me, I haven't really I plan to make espresso, and I will then take it and sell it as freeze dried. But I'm going to do it as espresso because that'll have the most meat in it. Like just coffee, But it does okay in the freeze dryer. It tastes like coffee. I wanted to do for me, if I was going to resell it commercially, doing a run of Hollow Roast coffee at a spray freeze dryer. What they do is they spray it in the air and instantly dehydrate it. It's a really cool, like my freeze dryer doesn't do that. That's how like the stuff you get at the store is done. I would probably do a run there if I was going to do it large scale, because the investment of time in doing a medium freeze dryer's load is what it is. So I threw the affiliate link in the comments.
I saw that. I forgot I can't pin from in here, but I'll
Oh, you can't.
Not from StreamYard. I have to go into YouTube to do it, but I'll get that. I'll make sure it's there.
What happens if you click on that comment?
Maybe I'm crazy, or maybe I'm. Oh no. It says put user in timeout. Now everybody's listening to us text.
Yeah, sorry. See, you can totally highlight it.
There, we'll put it up there. So
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I see. You mean pin it. I should have put on your YouTube comments.
Oh, that's all right. Don't worry.
I'm just trying to comment as myself.
I know. I kept sending. Remember the first time we did this, and I kept sending. You're like, why am I? You were commenting, but it was me commenting from StreamYard. It's like, oh,
yeah. On the Wednesday Live, I've started putting "This is Nicole" because sometimes we're going out on 3 channels, and the person commenting on the Wednesday Live is almost always Nicole. I don't think John Willis has ever typed a comment in for that. So, yeah, but it's like John Willis says something that John Willis would never say, and I'm like, no, that's not John.
That's not John at all. No. Have you still tinkering with TikTok at all? I know.
Yeah, I'm hot and cold with it right now because of it being a new thing I need to make time for.
No, it's good. Yeah. I've enjoyed it. I'm glad John gave me a kick in the ass over it because
I want to do my first duet. I haven't done a duet yet.
Oh, grab one of mine and duet.
My favorite duet of yours was that lady complaining about people. You know what I'm talking about? She was complaining about people duetting when all they're doing is recording their face, and you had like your face.
I was like, let's just turn it. I was like, you know what? I think I maybe had only done one duet before that, and I'm like, hey, let's try it. It's fun. It's just another platform. You know, it's another place. Like I'm answering generator questions over there now, which is kind of cool. And I don't know, I dig it so far. It's been pretty good. I need to learn
how to be disciplined with TikTok, because the problem with TikTok for me is I get on there and like it's an hour later when I get off there, I'm like, I just went to post a video.
I know.
And I watched all this stuff, or I commented. Yeah, it'll suck your time if you're not careful.
It sucks the life right out of you. You want the scroll, and you're like, at least if I sit down and watch a YouTube video, it's usually to learn something. But TikTok, it's like you can learn, and you do have to adjust your feed. You know, you have to develop it over time. I've been following more preppers, some Amish people, self-reliance people, and it seems to help. It does, you know?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think, Nicole? Do you have any more time, or we're getting about an hour and 20 minutes now?
Yeah, I can do more time if you want. It's up to you.
We can go, I don't know what what do you got going on at the holler right now? It's been a few months since I've been there. I kind of miss it already.
Well, we have sheep.
Really?
And integrating sheep here has been interesting. I will do an episode with Tactical just talking about what that looked like for him, because there was this period of time when you get livestock where you're like, I'm going to get livestock. And then you learn about the livestock, and then you get the livestock, and then it's way more work than you thought it was, which we've gone through all phases of that. And now it's more of a routine, but it's still more work than he thought it was, in part because we got a grass-eating animal in Tennessee, where last year the grass had to be mowed twice a week.
Right.
Because it was growing so fast. And then it didn't rain for like 6 weeks. So the grass didn't grow at all. And so we thought they were going to rotate through my property a couple of times because the grass grows so fast, and then, go to another property. And that's not what happened. They went through mine once, and I'm still recovering from it. Like, not in a bad way, but the stuff needs to grow back in order to be food for the animals. So the other thing is the clay ground, when it does not get rain, becomes like brick.
Yep.
And then you're putting step-in posts into brick,
right,
which means you have to pre-water everywhere you want to put a step-in post in if you want and then that means you have to carry water for every single frickin' post, right? Unless your hose reaches it.
Yeah.
And even then, like, you can't just hose it real quick. It's like it needs to be a slow drip.
Because it just run. Yeah.
I
totally get that.
So that's been, and then there are rocks here. So he was like, this was so much more work than I thought it was going to be. And now he's feeling a little stressed because he's behind on every other thing he thought he was going to do this year. So we're going to have a talk about that and what it was really like, because that is what it is really like on the homestead. Like, he thought he was going to help me with the garden.
He takes everything to such heart too. I love him.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. He's just incredibly huggable. Just to look at him, you want to give him a hug. I don't know why.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Hug raping.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yes, he doesn't mind if I give him a side hug, but he's a good fellow.
Yeah, side hugs are maybe. If he trusts you.
Yeah, well, that's true. I know. But he just cares so much. You can just tell every time.
He really wants to do a good job. He's done. I mean, there have been trials and tribulations, but the sheep are looking good. They're getting enough grass. I think he has the next 2 or 3 paddocks laid out. Cost a lot more in fencing than originally planned, but now some more fencing is coming in. So, because what happens, because we're rotating them, right?
Yep.
The more pastures you have set up ahead of time, the easier your life is. Sure. Because then you're just like, okay, go there. And they're like, food, we're going there. But if what you're doing is like, wait here while I finish running the wire, then that's a problem. They're like.
But that's, I mean, we did livestock for a lot of years, and it always seemed like the livestock idea came, and then the livestock came faster than the infrastructure. We were always finishing chicken coops before the chickens would get here, or building I remember when we got our wiener pigs, and I remember building a pen the night before we were getting them because they were on their way. But I found goats. I didn't find we had 3 goats for a couple of years one time, and I didn't find they were that how do you want to put it, that great of a lawnmower, to be honest. Like, they did, but they just didn't. I mean, we had a big lawn they were in, but they ate, but they never really helped with the grass control. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the goats don't here either. They're better weed whackers than lawnmowers.
Okay.
And the sheep will eat the grass. They're better lawnmowers.
Okay.
But the sheep also are weed whackers. The hair sheep are. So these guys, they will browse off of trees and other things and eat the weeds back. So I wish I had embraced the fact that we needed hair sheep on this hauler years before and not tried the goat step.
Right.
Because the goats did a lot here by being tethered out, but I now have expensive goat pets.
Right. Yeah.
Because we've sort of grazed out where they can still tether around and eat some stuff, and that's great. But it wasn't like there was this impenetrable thicket before the goats came. The sheep, I saw the sheep go on impenetrable thickets and just mow them down. And part of it is because there are 11 of them. So there's just a lot of eating activity. Yeah. And, 2 goats or 1 goat can only do so much. What I'd like to do is get the goats running with the sheep. That would be awesome. Without people getting hurt, or animals, actually.
So where where John Pugliano was set up for the spring workshop, and he had the hammer. So that grass there, and then the trees that go up there, are those your trees as well? Like the woods that you walk toward, is that where Nighthawk lives, up that way?
Oh, okay. Those are not, so where there's a fence and a gate.
Yeah.
That's the property line, and then that's Nighthawk's property. They went through there, though.
Okay, I was going to say, could they go through, because I was thinking that would be a nice, treed area. You said they like kind of that stuff too?
Yeah, they do. They love poison ivy.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
Wow. And they'll just eat it and have no problem with it?
Yeah.
What kind of sheep do you have?
So St. Croix, and then there are a couple Katahdin.
And they're going to be just strictly for their wool or their hair?
No, they're meat.
Oh, they're meat sheep.
So they're hair sheep, so they don't make wool.
Oh, that's what that means. Okay.
Yeah, and so they're meat. So and I love lamb. So we'll be processing some this fall. Hopefully we'll get some new ones this fall too.
Okay. Are you gonna?
But I want to reduce the herd for the winter because they eat hay in the winter when you're not growing grass. So
yeah. Are they are you gonna not get into breeding them, are you?
Oh no, they're breeding.
Oh, they
bred. So we bought them from a community member already bred in theory.
Oh.
And then I have witnessed the act happening since that time.
No shame.
Yeah, That's what happens. And hopefully they're pregnant. We will know. So in September, we're going to be separating boys from girls because the girls may be giving birth in October.
Okay.
And we don't want the boys with the girls when they give birth. And then we're going to take the boys that are big enough to the butcher.
So Jaggy has a question. I don't think I know the answer to this. Can you milk sheep like you can milk goats?
Can you milk sheep? Yes. That's why there are cheeses out there that are based on sheep's milk.
Did not know that.
But what I've heard from people who raise sheep is it's hard to get the sheep to want you to milk it. Something we're thinking about doing, but I don't know if I'll execute on this, is depending on the gender of what is born, I may decide to bottle feed females.
Really?
So that they are more handleable, because the females are more skittish than the males in this herd. So like some of these sheep are really, they're like, come scratch my back. Those are all males right now. And then there's, one of the females kind of will let me touch her if she's in the mood. And then the other two females are like, screw you, lady. We want nothing to do with you. And those two were kind of rescue sheep that ended up in the herd. They're the Katahdins. So if they have females and we're going to breed those females again, I may want to steal them and bottle feed them so they're just more friendly to us. Because what I would like are animals who birth to be animals I can intervene with if I need to or want to. Like it's nicer to be able to walk up to mama, whatever, and deal with whatever situation happens.
Was it the goats or was it the sheep that was it Tactical that hurt himself on one of them recently?
That was the goat.
That was the goat. Okay.
Yeah, well, there's one goat that is not friendly.
How are the sheep? Oh, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
How are the sheep? They're not too. I mean, I know you said
they're
skittish.
They're kind of skittish. Like if you come running up to them, they're going to run away, even though they know you.
Really?
And then the two primary males, so there's like a hierarchy of males. The A and B male will walk up and say, "Pet me," and they'll snuggle. They'll actually look for affection. And there's a third male now who sort of kind of walks up, and then all the rest of them think we're scary.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So you can catch them, but it takes some effort.
How big of a paddock do you have built for them?
So I don't know how big the paddocks are that we're building.
Oh, okay.
They're probably, when he does one, it's probably 100 by 100 feet or so. It kind of depends on the terrain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll just eat through it, and then they go to the next one. And
That's
then
cool.
So they're being kept in by electric wire, which the people who have before us trained them on that, and that works great. If you leave them somewhere too long, they will disrespect the wire and just move on to where they want to be, though.
They will. Okay.
Yeah, they'll be like, well, that's going to be a little pain, but it's more painful not to eat, so I'm going to go slide under that. But as long as you keep them moving and having access to good food, they're fine. Or you can throw hay in, right? Then they'll eat the hay.
Have you had any escape yet? Or like, have you had to catch one that was outside of where it should be?
Oh, they've gotten out a few times. Yeah.
What's that like?
There was only one time that was sketchy where the whole herd got out. They didn't know us very well. It was their first week here, and they were spooked a little bit, and they were eating all the plants I didn't want them to eat on my hillside garden. And at that point, they kind of knew Tactical, and they didn't know me very well at all. And so my method was to kind of freak them out in the right direction. And then Tactical got sheep treats and shook them, and they're like, okay, actually, yeah, we do want to go out there. Now, when they get out, it's like, oh, okay, here's the pellets. Shake, shake, shake. They're like, treats? And they just come.
Okay.
So once they know you, it's a lot. They're not that hard to get back in when they get out.
They're not like goats. I mean,
yeah, well, although I say my goat, if she got out, I mean, I did chase her a few times, but once I figured out that she was super curious, I would just pretend like I didn't care she was out. And then I'd go be like, wow, this is a really interesting bush. You don't want to see this bush, but this is a really interesting bush. And she'd be like, okay, I want to see the bush. And I'd grab her collar, and then we're fine. So part of it is knowing the demeanor of the animal you're getting.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, there's one more question here. We'll ask that and we can, yeah. So Leela, she said, I'm a little confused about when to use an O2 absorber, when to vacuum seal, and when you need to do both when storing freeze-dried food in canning jars.
There are charts that you can look up that tell you what size O2 absorber to use based on the size of volume of food you're putting in.
Okay.
So the size O2 absorber adjusts based on the volume of food. And then my opinion is if you're vacuum sealing something, you don't need the O2 absorber. Other people disagree with me on that. In the bags, in the Mylar bags, most people are not vacuum sealing. They're just sealing with the O2 absorber to absorb any oxygen that was in the bag when they sealed it, because they say that the vacuum sealers do not work. So they're just putting the O2 absorber in, then they're closing the bag, and that's it. They're sealing it with the sealer that came with the Harvest Right. If you vacuum pack that, I don't think you need an O2 absorber. Other people disagree with me. I'm also not trying to store it for 25 years. If you want to hedge your bet, you throw that O2 absorber in there if you're actually going for the 25-year storage. Now, here's the cool thing about the O2 absorber. It absorbs the oxygen. What that means is if like you put one in a jar and you screw the lid on the jar, and it works, it will vacuum seal that lid on. It'll suck the oxygen out. That sucks that lid down. Same with the Mylar bags. If there's a little bit of air in there, it sucks that in. So that is how some people are quote unquote vacuum sealing, is
right.
with the O2 absorbers.
Okay. Yeah. Cause functionally, they're both basically doing the same thing, removing any oxygen inside a sealed environment.
Yeah. But if there is no oxygen, why do you need an O2 absorber?
You shouldn't. That's what
in case oxygen gets in. That's the only reason.
Oh yeah, sure. As a backup, I suppose, because we've done some 5-gallon buckets with Mylar bags, and I ended up buying a bunch of hand warmers. Which, for those who don't know, buy them cheap. I always tell everybody, buy your seasonal stuff at the end of the season and buy them when they're on clearance, because they last forever if they're sealed up, really.
Yeah.
And then use them, and they work. I've had good luck with them so far, anyway.
Yep.
But we were an hour and a half, Nicole. I got to say thank you. I'm glad you carried the conversation today, because
well, get past that crud, man. It sucks.
I'm way better than I was. So that's
yeah. Well, so here's my advice. If you have the grip,
please. Yes.
The plague, the thing that's going around that everybody's afraid of, and that is when you start feeling like he is now, you feel a little better, and you're like, I'm going to go take on the world. If you do that, then the next day you're like, holy crap, I'm tired. So there's this thing that happens if you push it too far at first, where you'll pay for it. So just find that line.
I'm worried about that. Yeah, because I am feeling better and I feel like I want to go do a bunch of things, but I get
you. Do one thing and then be like, okay, how do I feel? Did I drink enough water? Am I keeping my vitamin regimen up? Like assess as you go. You'll find the line.
I appreciate it, because this is my first. It's gone through the house a couple times. My first time getting it, so here we are.
Well, good. Now you're inoculated.
Apparently, yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
You got your V.
That thing obviously did its job, didn't it? Yeah. Anyway, another story. So cool. Thanks, Nicole. Any for the couple people that livingfreeintennessee.com, is that the easiest way? Or
livingfreeintennessee.com and hollerroast.com for coffee. If you are in Canada, sorry.
It's okay. It happens. That's why I'm here now. So
you can come pick some up at the Self-Reliance Festival on October 1st and 2nd. Toolman Tim's going to be speaking there, so you'll have a fellow Canadian to hang out with, and those tickets are available at selfreliancefestival.com.
I'm stoked. I cannot wait. I can't get my fill of Tennessee.
I'm firming up some live music right now too, so there's going to be some Saturday evening stuff going on.
Nice.
Too. Yeah.
And Becky is going to be. She's flying, so she is already set that she's coming back to Spring Workshop next year.
Yay.
And it's only like a week after she gets back from England. She already said she's coming back and she's coming with me. So
cool.
It'll be good. But
great.
All right. Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Have a good day, guys. There we go.